Mr. Lau, thank you for being here. We're lucky to have you here. My name is Jarrell. I'm one of the project managers. Ray is the other one. So thank you for being here for us to interview you. We'd love to get to know you more and more about the engineering pathway as a whole.
Oh yes. Now getting into the engineering part of the questions instead
Thank
of
you.
Swedish Fish. Is there anything that inspired you or motivated you to going down your career path?
It was something that stuck in my mind when I went on a field trip to the Board of Water Supply. I think I might have been in fifth or sixth grade, Waipahu Elementary School. When I came here to the Beretania office, we have this pipe out in the front yard, a big vertical pipe, and it's attached to the artesian wells. So they turn off the electric pumps and they open the valve, and the water just gushed out of that pipe based using artesian head. So I don't know why, but that kind of stuck in my mind when I was in elementary school. I thought, well, it'd be kind of nice to work in the field of water. And very fortunate that Keakua has provided that opportunity for me to have a career here. Thank you.
Has BWS changed since that field trip? Like, has it got bigger or more complex?
I would say the number of employees from the time I worked here first in 1980 as a young engineer, engineer level one, I think we had about 600 plus employees within the department. And from 1980 to now, which is a long time ago, it's almost over 40 years ago, it's we have only about 550 employees. So the size of the organization is pretty much the same, but I would say the complexity of the issues that we have to deal with is much greater, and it grows more complicated each year, more challenging. For example, in 1980, some of the environmental regulations and also the drinking water regulations weren't as plentiful and as strict. So over time they get stricter and there's more regulations. Like right now there's a new amended regulations to the lead and copper rule that just was published in the Federal Register by the EPA just about a week ago. And that's a result of tighter regulations brought about by the situation in Flint, Michigan. You probably heard about the lead contaminated drinking water that I think about 100,000 people living in Flint, Michigan had to suffer and endure. So because of that, the EPA passed stricter regulations. So we have now the challenge of the complexity and the timing required to comply with those regulations. Just a little bit of an example.
Since we're going over challenges, what type of challenges did you face throughout your career?
Well, let's see. Like first of all was graduating from college. That was a challenge because I'm not the smartest guy around. I'm not a genius. I think my daughters are more smart than me. But college was the first challenge. Took a lot of sweat, hard work, studying, and not giving up. And I finally somehow passed. Then I would say the next step for an engineer in Hawaii and in other states is to get your license, your engineering professional license. So there are two exams that you have to take to get there. And by some miracle, I was able to do that. Other challenges are getting to work with different people. When you get out, graduate high school, and go out into the job market, you get to experience all kinds of personalities and types of people in the workforce. Just like your classmates in school, in high school right now, you probably don't have them all, they're not all the same. And that's actually the kind of the blessing of society is that we're we have variety and we have different personalities. I think one of the biggest challenges in my career has been learning how to work with different kinds of people and being able to forge a team effort to accomplish greater things than I could do by myself.
Do you have any maybe advice for a typical aspiring engineer? Maybe some unforeseen obstacles they may encounter?
I think first of all, depending on the economy at the time that you graduate college and you're ready to go into the job market, that can also face the first challenge. When I graduated in 1978 from the University of Hawaii, there wasn't a lot of professional engineering jobs. Most of the jobs was in like construction. So I had to go into construction first and work in construction for a little while, and then move into a entry-level technician engineering tech job in the city, and then from there into an engineering position at the Board of Water Supply. So the economy, getting a job at the moment that you graduate college could be a factor. The other thing is, like I mentioned earlier, is working with different people. And there are all kinds of people in the workplace and in society. So some people are easier to work with, and some people are very rough sandpaper, and they sand you raw sometimes. And trying to deal with that and cope with that, and still being professional and courteous, it was a challenge. But it also became an opportunity. So one of the things I've learned in my career is, with every problem, there's always an opportunity. So in my career here at the Board of Water Supply, which is this is now the second time I'm back at the BWS. The first time I had a boss that rubbed me like rough sandpaper. It was real tough, and it actually pushed me to a decision to leave BWS and to kind of spread my wings and try something different. And that different was actually moving to another island with my family to work for the water department on Kauai. But because of that experience, actually that was a benefit, because I got to move to other jobs and gain more experience before I came back into this position. So I just thank Keakua for helping me. And that was actually a blessing instead of a problem and something that I look at negatively. I look at it positively now.
I have a question. So you talked a lot about teamwork. So I was wondering, what's your typical workday like, such as your paperwork, or how many times you work with other employees?
Typical workday is probably anywhere between, and this is typical of a manager. So my typical workday is filled mostly with meetings. And interacting with other people, with other folks within the Board of Water Supply to address a problem or an issue, or dealing with the community stakeholders. So I would say on the average, I probably have about 8 to 10 meetings a day. It's actually gotten worse with the virtual environment, because I don't need any driving time or walking time to go to another place to have a meeting. Actually, I kind of miss that, because I could get some exercise. But now it's just click on the computer, log into Teams or Zoom or WebEx, and the meeting started. And meetings are scheduled now like almost back to back. But that's kind of my typical workday. So I get in around 7:45, 8 o'clock, end up leaving maybe 6:30, sometimes 7 in the evening. Usually the last person out of this building, but, except when Steve and Stella stick around, and I see their light on at the end of the hallway.
Oh, I have a question. What would you say is your proudest accomplishment in your career?
So now I've worked in public service. This will be my 42nd year later this year. And I worked for Honolulu City and County, Board of Water Supply, Kauai County Department of Water, and the state of Hawaii. Department of Land and Natural Resources, and Department of Accounting and General Services. I'd say one of the most fulfilling things was when I worked for the State Department of Accounting and General Services. And at the time, the governor was Governor Linda Lingle. And there was a problem on the island with homelessness, especially with homeless families on the beaches, with young children. So the governor tasked us to renovate, build homeless shelters, temporary housing for the homeless. And I think one of the biggest challenges, I got the order from my department head on a Thursday afternoon. Prepare this 30,000 square foot warehouse to become a homeless shelter next Monday for the governor to open up. So I'll tell you, that was a lot of pressure, and I think I still feel some of the PTSD from that experience. But yeah, we mobilized. At first, I thought it was a joke. Who could renovate a 30,000 square foot existing warehouse into a homeless shelter in one weekend? But we did it. Team effort, and we worked like dogs through that weekend. And the governor came in on a Monday afternoon and opened the shelter up. It's now called Next Step, and that was the shelter that we built and renovated in 2006, and it's still in operation today. I think that was one of the most fulfilling things. The other things, to see the faces of the families as they were able to move into a shelter or into temporary housing. And one special moment was the project lead, this guy Kalana Park, called me one afternoon to go with him to Nanakuli, to go to the beaches of Nanakuli. And I went with him, and he had his car, his SUV was full of toys. So we spent that afternoon passing out toys to the children on the beaches and those families. So I'll always remember that for my entire life.
Seeing how you're talking about teamwork when you're working on the project in the warehouse, have you had any coworkers and you've seen their working habits? Have any of those habits that you've seen affected how you currently manage and perform your job?
Yes, that's very true. You manage to the team you have, and usually one management approach doesn't work for everybody, because we're all different people, have different strengths and weaknesses. For example, there could be one person that is a very nice person, but allows things to back up and be procrastinated and be way overdue all the time. So how do you manage that person? We always gentle reminders, status report, progress meetings with that individual. Or there could be somebody else that likes to be likes to take the ball and run with it. So your management approach might be just point them in the right direction, give them the resources and the general guidance, and support them and let them get it done. And that's the easiest to manage person, I think. There are others that actually, in management, you'll find that some of the team members don't want to be on the team or don't agree with the objectives of the team. And so that kind of resistance, is something you'll have to learn to deal with and do the best you can to get the team forged together. I find that the team development this is just me talking, kind of goes through different evolutionary stages. So the initial team comes together of different people that normally maybe not work together on a team or a project. Then it's trying to build alignment, a singleness, a vision, and buy-in that they are all going to work toward this. Those that are resistant you may think that we should be progressing to different stages of the project. They may still be in questioning the need for the project or even the solutions. So learning how to deal with that is part of the challenges of being a leader. I hope I answered your question, Alex.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I think one of the questions was it traits. Was there a question about my path to becoming an engineer? Oh, yeah. Can you describe your path in becoming an engineer?
Yeah,
Becoming a chief engineer.
we were wondering, like, we saw your biography on the website. We wanted to know how, like, you got to becoming the chief engineer here.
I think it was a miracle. I would have never imagined being here. When I first started back in 1980 as an engineer, almost fresh out of college, I never even thought about even thinking about getting into management. All I knew I had was a strong passion for what I was doing, and that was in the area of planning and looking at the water systems and dealing with those kind of issues. But I would say, and it was a cliche because when I came in, you know, this cliche that you always should listen to your elders, your kopuna, you know, really pay attention to what they're saying. When I started in 1980, I never paid any attention to what they're saying, and I worked with a group of great older engineers, and they would give me advice, but I never listened. So now coming 40 years through this process, I would say I wish I'd listened to some of the advice that they provided. So my advice to you folks, I know when you're young, you're thinking about a lot of other things that are important, and you don't may not listen to the older engineers or the older professionals in the workplace because you're thinking, well, you know, I know better than them, which is what my daughter tells me all the time. I know better than you. But you know, I would encourage you to kind of listen carefully. You don't have to take everything that every piece of advice they give you, but try to weigh each point that they give you because it could save you a lot of pain and suffering later on through your career. You can learn from their mistakes, like you know, you can learn from my mistakes that I made. And one of the mistakes I think I wish I had listened more closely to the senior, more professional engineers when they provided different advice to me.
As you're talking about advice, is there any specific like program or extracurricular activities that you think college students should go into? Well, except for internships that would like help them in the workplace.
I think if you can join different societies or organizations, you know, like in the waterworks field, the American Waterworks Association Hawaii chapter, or you know, the Water Environment Federation, or ASME or ASCE. It's a good way to interact and get to know other professionals in your field. Because if not, you're going to be limited to the people that you work immediately around, that you work with in your job. So I would say use that as a way to mingle, and you never know when they get to know you better. If an opportunity comes up, they may let you know there's an opportunity. Why don't you apply? And that might help open some doors for you as young engineers. One thing I would say, if you ask me if I ever had a chance to do it over again, I mean, I would say probably no, except for one thing. When I was a young engineer, brand new out of school, and I applied for jobs, I actually was offered a job to work for the U.S. Army in South Korea, and kind of leave Hawaii and go work abroad in a foreign country. Somehow I always kind of say, well, maybe I should have said yes and had gone to work in Korea for the Army for a few years just to get the experience, the life experience there of a different culture, different challenges. But when you're young, please, you know, use those times. My suggestion is use that opportunity, because the moment you get a family, and especially when you get children, then the decisions to move and change jobs become much more impactful, so you make that decision carefully with your spouse. But when you're still single and you have less family obligations, it gives you the opportunity to kind of experience different areas of the profession, go in different places, maybe even different countries. I am not saying go work for the Navy or the military, but Board of Water Supply is also a good place to work for too. The engineering profession will always be needed in society. It's applied science for the benefit of mankind, for the community. And with the challenges we face, I think we're going to need good engineers to take on the challenges of the future. Like I said earlier, things seem to get harder over time. I know right now I might think it's really hard right now in 2021 with the challenges we're facing here at BWS. But I know that in 20 years from now, the challenges may be very different, and it'll make my time here at 2021 look easy in comparison. So I know you folks are up to that challenge in the future.
I have one final question on the list we made. So we were wondering, how does BWS as a whole deal with COVID?
Oh, okay. So start off with BWS performs an important function that is essential for life on Oahu, provision of drinking water to our community. So we're a municipal utility that we have to keep running no matter what's happening with the pandemic. So some of the challenges are, how do we implement measures that the CDC has recommended in the workplace and create a workplace that is safe for the people working here to continue to work and provide that service to our community? And it has been challenges. So we developed different policies. We provided face masks, face coverings. We have worked with the rest of the city to open up opportunities for COVID testing. And now we're moving into the vaccination area. So we also did physical changes to our layout of our offices, putting more physical space between people, social distancing, or renovating like our lobby to provide like barriers between the public and the employees so that they can interact safely without a lot of virus transmission. It's also been very important on the area of communication, and I thank Stella and Steve for getting that information out through our intranet to our employees on a weekly basis. We provide new information that comes out. Those are some of the measures we've taken. It has been a challenge because the COVID, when it first came out, we didn't know much about that virus. But over time, more information gets developed or released. So we adjust our procedures, our practices to meet that. And I'm sure one thing that concerns me is this new variant that's come out of England and maybe South Africa. I think England is the B117 version of the virus. More infectious, so would it render some of the practice that we have right now operating pretty safely without too many infections in the workplace? How are we going to deal when the virus becomes even more infectious? And we have to adjust. We'll have to adjust then and do things differently. Like Steve and Stella are teleworking right now. It looks like Steve is in New York, and Stella, you might be in Boston or someplace. And I think all of you are basically working, studying from home right now. So doing more of that, I think, will be on the order. And when the virus is over and we have dealt with it and moved beyond it, I'd like to try to continue some of these approaches that we have in place. Hopefully the city will have policies that support that effort.
Actually, I wanted to ask a question about how the transition from being an engineer to someone who does more management, Is there any like particular things that you wouldn't have expected to see when shifting your career objectives?
Yeah, it's a very good question, Alex, because when I moved from Honolulu to Kauai, I moved from a more technical position here in BWS to like the number 2 head of that utility in Kauai. So some of the things I think is to prepare you for that transition. Not every engineer will want to do that transition, but I think it's a good step forward in your career if you like that type of work. I would, in retrospect, I think I would have probably taken or gotten more training or be exposed to more management concepts before I made that transition to Kauai to a management position. That would have made it a little bit easier because it becomes less technical and more about people. And right now, I would say my day is probably 80 or 90% people issues and 10% technical, or 20% technical. But I find it challenging. Some days I would say, am I crazy to be in this job? Why did I do this to myself? Because some of the personnel issues and human issues could be very intense. But I realized that I can do more good in this position than if I was just doing the technical aspects, because now I have responsibility and accountability for the entire utility. And I kind of like that because I think I can do greater good for our community by me serving in this role and helping to support the technical staff, the experts in addressing issues and helping to meld them together into solutions and to work as a team.
I'm not sure if we have any more questions, Mr. Lau. So I'd like to say, do you have any more questions, Mr. Lau? Or
no, I'm good. Thank you.
I'd like to say on behalf of the group here, and one of our group members is actually not here, but if he was here, I'd like to say on their behalf, thank you for being here. Thank you for finding time for us to interview you. And also thank you, Mrs. Bernardo and Mr. Nordstrom, for organizing this. This was very fun. We got to learn more about engineering as a whole and Mr. Lau's story. And
thank you so much for this opportunity, and I wish you the best in your careers, and you folks will do great. Thank you.
thank you.
Mahalo.